5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and the band is back. The boys are back in town, the full crew. I'm sad to let Craig know he does not have the floor to himself this week. Like he did last week.
Well, that isn't necessarily sad news for me.
But the entire MGoBlog Roundtable crew is with us, starting with the man who started it all at the blog from MGoBlog.com, Brian Cook. BC, how are you?
I am well.
Hey, Brian, by the way, just real quick, are you surprised by the start for the Michigan hockey team?
I wouldn't say surprised. Like, they always look like a team with a lot of talent and depth. So I think that they've done well, and I think that they've played approximately how I expected. Now, there's always bounces of the puck and whatnot, so they could have played the way they have and been 7-3 instead of 9-1. But they're a good team.
Yeah, a really good team. Yeah, it sounds like talking to Spath yesterday. He said, "Man, I don't know that I saw them being this good right now. They were maybe a little ahead of the schedule he thought they'd be on. But here they are, looking like a contender this year." Seth Fisher, how are you this morning?
Morning, Sam. I want to talk to you a little bit about a German philosopher named Rudolf Virchow today. One of the smartest guys who ever lived. But when presented with Neanderthal, the first Neanderthal they ever found, he said, "You know what? It's just a deformed human." But you know what, Sam? That deformed human that he thought he saw, well, they have ancestors on this very podcast today. Craig Ross, thank you for holding this down for us.
Hey, Neanderthals were the beautiful people.
Yeah,
I knew since I got on this radio show with Craig Ross that there was going to be at some point a 15-minute lecture on Rudolf Virchow, which is it's just one of those things that you know is going to happen. And I'm so glad it happened. The one day I happened to sleep through my alarm, and I didn't have to hear any of it.
Because you slept through your alarm. I had nothing else to talk about. Sam was me up.
I don't know what was said in there, but it was.
Oh no, you pretty much nailed it. You pretty much nailed it. That ode to Craig was a very good intro for Craig Ross. Craig, how are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty well, and happy that I don't have to do even dumber jibber jabber this week. Although what I've got, because I kept promising about Virchow, what I've got in the future is how the Ann Arbor phone book ceased to exist because of a combination of George Leroy Tirebiter and Rudolph Virchow. But I'm saving that for a day when and how that connects to Michigan football. And I'm saving that for a day when none of my compadres show up like last week.
You test my ability to segue, Craig. I must say it is very, very fancy. I pride myself on the ability to.
I know you're good at it,
but with you, it is exceedingly difficult. But we shall do so right now, and segue over into talking about the game. Brian Cook, as the Wolverines went in with goals and aspirations, right? The primary of which we are going to get this passing game balance, of course, being first and foremost, but we're going to get this passing game going. And there are some things that were open, but some things that weren't hit. I want to guide the question in that way as I ask you for your biggest takeaways from the game.
Well, going into the season, you have a freshman quarterback, and everybody is like, this freshman quarterback is going to lose us a game, maybe 2 games. And the 2 most recent weeks are the games Bryce Underwood lost Michigan. Now, they didn't lose those games because they were playing Michigan State and Purdue. But you go into the season and you know that progress is not linear. You know that your freshman quarterback is going to have one of those games where it's just like, what planet did you come from? And if you've seen a football before, and that is going to happen. And for Bryce Underwood against Purdue, it was just the first half. He was pretty good in the second half, de-emphasized because Michigan was like, we're going to ground and pound this team. And I just caution anyone from reading too much into a couple of bad games. Like in 2023, when Michigan played Bowling Green, J.J. McCarthy had the worst game of his life.
Mhm.
And that was a junior J.J. McCarthy. This is a guy who was ready to win a national championship, not an 18-year-old. So whatever was happening with Bryce was something that we've seen before from quarterbacks who are much older than Bryce. And he's going to get there, but progress is not linear. And my takeaways from the game aren't really about Bryce Underwood. They're about Jordan Marshall. They're about that offensive line. Because Jordan Marshall had a couple of the most incredible runs you're ever going to see. And that offensive line is far too organized and good to have 3 redshirt freshmen on it. So just take a breath and, like, mentally move that fumble a yard upfield and have him throw to the wide open Donovan McCulley. And this is a 42-16 game. And everybody's like, oh, fine, great, wonderful. 35, not 42. So for me, it's
Wide
about
open Marlon Klein. Now you're 42.
Sure. Yes. Like, there are issues that you're always going to have when you have Bryce Underwood as your quarterback. But what I keep telling these people after I do the UFR every week is that this offensive line is coming, and Jordan Marshall is coming, and they have guys who are going to be here for the next 2 and 3 years who are already performing at close to an all Big Ten level. And that is the takeaway that you need to have from this game, not the freshman quarterback did freshman quarterback things.
Yeah. All right, Seth Fisher.
Yeah, Brian covered pretty much all my thoughts on offense there. On defense, they Purdue was very college crap, we like to call it, with a CRAPPE. It is when I looked at what they were doing, Purdue kept on running the same kind of play every single time, and they had the same look, and they had this tunnel screen they kept on going back to, and they kept on they had this look where there's one side is man and one side is zone, and they just kind of read what happens when they cross. Purdue had plans for what Michigan does, right? They called them off sides a whole bunch of times. They just messed with all the little rules that Wink has, and Michigan really kind of went into this game saying, just get me to the bye. So I thought that if you look at the defense as a whole, it wasn't as bad as I thought going in. I was like, oh God, these guys got pushed around and they kind of got lucky. I thought it was another one of those games where the fact that they scored 10 points was actually more kind of the offense screwing up, right? They had a fumble and the defensive performance wasn't great. But when I looked at like the individual players, it wasn't really that bad. It's just they were just so vanilla, and I've been asking for them to be vanilla. So I'm going to take my lumps. I'm going to say, look, I asked them to be vanilla. I asked them to play, don't keep on blitzing everybody. Maybe get them down to the, if you get down to the low red zone and they then do something interesting, blitz them interesting one time. I was actually more upset with special teams for not putting the defense in good positions all the time, because Purdue, they've had this problem all year. You put them inside their own 20, they can't do anything. Everything they do, they need to kind of risk having a sack, or they need to risk having a screen blown up, right? Because it's college crap. So if you put them in the low, in their own shadow of their goalpost, they can't do anything because they can't take the risk. They can't go for it on 4th down. And then once you get to midfield, then they can have this 4th down strategy and they can kind of play under you. And that's kind of what happened. And then they brought out all these like quarterback run things and all that crap. And they score a touchdown there and they score a touchdown later. And it was a mediocre performance from a defense that really wasn't trying its best. And I thought, whatever, get us to the bye.
Yeah, I feel like Brian is. I mean, I'm confused. He's the complete voice of reason, and the complete voice of temperance in terms of what's going on on the offense. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, you were saying, hey, no one should panic. Help is on the way, and next year. We're going to be good. Yeah, we're going to be good next year on offense. I think that's right. Right now, how good are we? Well, we're okay. But there are problems. The thing that interests me was Vance. I think I heard him this morning saying that he was really disappointed in the defense against Purdue.
Defensive line specifically.
And particularly the defensive line. And I went back and I looked at it, and I had the same feeling, but then I looked at the numbers. Well, Purdue came into the game averaging 7.3 yards per pass attempt. That isn't sack adjusted. I didn't look at that. And in the Michigan game, I think they were 4 yards an attempt. They came into the game averaging about 4.3 yards per rush, and they averaged, I think, 3.5 yards per rush, against Michigan. So it's hard for me to say that even though I had the same feeling, and it felt like the Michigan defense wasn't particularly good against Purdue, Purdue didn't do anything. I mean, in the end, they gained 138 yards passing and 138 yards rushing. So, I'm not quite sure what to make of it when my instincts, which were the same as, a non-expert, the same as Vance Bedford's, an expert, and then you look at the numbers and the numbers don't quite seem to connect to it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that coaches look at things as in I can't. They don't have gap discipline. Oh my God, this is terrible. This team doesn't. How could you not do that? And I look at it and go, okay, well, that was Nate Owusu-Boateng. That was a true freshman playing his first game, and he gets in the wrong gap. The linebackers were terrible. The freshman linebackers were terrible. Bowles is not a good player. Cam Brandt, not a good player
yet.
Not a good player yet. They have a lot of they have players out there who are, I expect, not going to, once they can't take that many hits. Nobody can lose Jason Barham, Jimmy Rolder, Cole Sullivan, and then still have a great linebacking crew. Bowles maybe could get there, maybe by next year. The freshman, I think that it takes some time. It's a hard position to play. Mm-hmm. What's weird is that this team is dedicated to rotating so much, even when there's a massive gap between the starters and the next guy. There's, they go through half a drive and you're already, 16 plays into a drive, and now we're going to bring in Derek Moore. It's you had a quarter break in there. Why at the quarter break when everybody just got a little bit of rest? Do you not just put your best players on the field?
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I don't quite. I can't say that I know the all of the ins and outs of their rotational strategy, right? You assume that there's a process to it that has to do with practice, but I think we'd be naive if we didn't believe that across the country. You're playing more guys because you got to play more guys, because if you don't, they leave. I think that plays into it too. I think that has to play into it some here as well. Now, maybe it shouldn't, but I think it probably does.
If Cam Brandt was playing, 30% of snaps instead of 55% of snaps, is he going to leave?
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying why we might see a wider rotation. Then maybe it's why are they playing so many guys? Because I think that could be a way to get to increased consistency. And I think that as you get against Ohio State, for instance, it might be the only pathway. It might be the only pathway forward. But as you're building depth, if you're trying to build depth, getting there, maybe this is sustainable for now. But to a point that you made prior to that, because I was very much in line with what you said. I said the same thing you did about the linebackers. Hey, when you got young linebackers in there, you're going to have some mistakes. They looked young. And so what Vance told me when I said that was, he said, well, the plan, as far as I can tell, watching it was, we're going to blitz those guys. He said he blitzed those guys to try to protect them. And he put the issues that they had on the field, mostly with the line. He said a lot of times those linebackers would wind up in the same gap as the defensive linemen because the linemen were in the wrong gap, not the linebackers. and he said, I just he feels like the D line, and you mentioned Derek Moore, but the interior line, he feels like they rotate too much. And so you guys are saying a lot of the same things, but he was particularly critical of the interior defensive linemen and how they play.
Is they weren't doing this last year. Like Graham and Grant had about 600 snaps, and the guys behind them had about 300 and total. Like there were two guys who split the year basically, and then Benny had about 300 snaps too. So they had a 2-to-1 snap ratio for the defensive tackles, and defensive end. It was like Moore had 500 and Brand had 300 last year. So the breakdown here is not something they were doing even a year ago under the same defensive coordinator. And I don't know if somebody's hurt or like it's not, like the reasons for it seem pretty obscure to me, because everybody who grades players is saying that, you know, Derek Moore is very good and Cam Brandt is not there yet. So it just kind of feels like if you're going to play Brandt because he's going to be around next year, that makes some sense. But the ratios are just kind of like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. I mean, can you actually run a team being worried about guys leaving? I mean, to me, that just feels like not a sustainable reality. It seems like you have to run a team based on who are your best guys, getting them on the field, and then when games are not in doubt, building your depth there. But I don't understand. I mean, if that's what it is, I don't understand it. And maybe I'm just wrong, but it seems to me that you can't run a team that way. And you've got the portal is a two-way street. It exists for everyone. You got guys leaving. Okay, bring guys in. I mean, Dusty May, for example, seems completely comfortable with that. With that particular reality, you know, he's going to get his best 8 out there. He's going to play his best 8. If guys decide to leave, fine, like they did last year. We'll go out and deal with it. I'm with Vance on this one. I don't get it, but maybe there's a reason.
If you got to be something, right? If we want to talk about how do you keep a team together in this day and age, you have to say my program is about this. And that was when we looked around, when Harbaugh left and was like, okay, where are we going next? Everyone was on board with Sharon because the culture. This program has a culture. And that culture is, part of that culture is I don't care how many snaps I get, because we're going to have the best players on the team. And when I get tired, I'm going to go out and the other guy's going to come in. It was not about everybody gets the. It was not about you get yours, right? That was not a team priority in 2023. Now they did a lot of rotations, but they did rotations because there was multiple guys who could play, and that was what decided if you could play, you could be on the field. Now the defensive tackle situation, it's hard to like talk about it. Yes, there's a ton of rotation at defensive tackle. One thing I just noticed about the DT, like it's hard to say like, okay, this guy is not performing this way, because there's Benny and Pierce, and then there's a pretty sizable gap, and then there's a lot of guys who are kind of just guys, and you have a lot of, and innings eaters are great at DT. I would take an innings eater. I would take 4 of them every year. I love it. But there's not a whole lot of difference if you got Payne in there, or you got Williams in there, or you got Ike in there, or Etta in there. Etta's a little different because he's a little smaller and gets pushed around, but has some more upside as a pass rusher. But other than that, like a lot of these guys are pretty interchangeable, and you're just trying to give them opportunities. What drives me nuts about the DTs is that you had a team that's there's a tempo team. And you're running your DTs on and off the field every few plays. They're getting more wear and tear running on and off the field.
I don't think that's true.
They are actually playing, because they're only in there for 3 snaps. And then you've got a 340-pound guy who's like running to get off the field before they snap the ball. It's
a football snap is trying to deadlift a 300-pound guy. Like, come on. Like, that's not the same as running on and off the field.
I've done sprints over at 270 pounds, and it takes it out of you quickly. So I don't know what takes it out of them. How tired can you get in 3 snaps? How tired is Trey Pierce after? Now he's been hurt, so I don't know if Pierce. How tired is Benny after 3 snaps? But I don't want to focus on the DTs, and I don't want to like get into specifics like that.
And I thought, I thought
the playing more if you're playing better.
Yeah, when the ultimate conclusion with Vance was because he's very, very process driven, and he's stuck on issues even in wins that, if not corrected, could harm you down the line. So he's been doing that forever. But to me, the main point was when they had to have like some key stops, like after the red zone turnover right before the half, they got a key 3 and out, got the ball back, and they were able to score that 4th down stop that they got. They got some key stops in this game when they needed to have them in an unexpected. This game was not expected to be close. You thought you were going to be able to light them up offensively. You had a lot of key players out defensively, and for all of the inconsistency that we saw at times defensively, they really did stand up when they had to. And so that said something to me, even with some of the inconsistencies that we saw.
Yeah, it's not just happening at defensive tackle, not just happening at defensive line. It's not just happening. Linebacker was understandable this week because there's so many guys injured. But even then, you could play Ernest Hausman and Troy Bowles the whole game. They were they're dipping unnecessarily into Chase Taylor in the first quarter when it's just, what are we doing here? And then you get these long drives, and then you wear out, and then you need to move out the other guys. But they're doing it with the secondary as well. There are a lot of snaps with Jair Hill at nickel, with Metcalf off the field. And there were a lot of snaps with, both with neither of your top cornerbacks out there. Now Sanders, I get because he's young, and you're going to get more out of him. Metcalf was banged up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, so there was another guy went down. But like Caleb Anderson's out there for a ton of snaps, and it's like, well, you got Zeke Berry. Cornerbacks can play a game, right? It's not unusual for cornerback to play 72 snaps. And it's just like I said, it was at the end of the first quarter. You get a quarter break. They're in the middle of a long drive. You have an opportunity to kick them off the field, and you put, all backups out there. And then they keep on moving down the field again. And it's like, well, now you have to run them on and off the field. And it just seems like if it's a program goal to make sure everybody's getting snaps against Purdue, go and beat Purdue first and then get them snaps. You could do that too.
Yeah. So bye week came at a great time for the entire team. They definitely got some things to clean up defensively, but offensively is where a lot of the attention is focused. We spend so much time focused on the passing game and Bryce, understandably so. I think Brian hit on a key point, and probably haven't talked about it enough, admittedly, present company included. The game that the offensive line had blocking the run, and the game that Jordan Marshall had running the football. I think you guys might remember this. I questioned in the offseason whether they would be able to do of what they've done the last couple of games against anyone. I know these aren't the monsters of the Midway that they faced, but would they be able to line up and say, we're going to run it when you it's coming to close out games, bully you when if we can't do the other thing, or if we just want to bully you. And they were able to do that, even with all of the attention and focus on, installing the things that Chip wanted to do in the offseason. And that satisfies a big question I had this offseason.
Well, it seems to me the run game has been pretty good. It was pretty good when they had Haynes. It's been pretty good, at least with Jordan Marshall. And it was even pretty good when Kuzdal came in, because he ran the ball reasonably well. It looks like what we saw from him in the spring wasn't a mirage. And Michigan is getting some movement from their offensive line, even with all the changes over the course of the year. In fact, it seems like, if anything, it's getting a little bit better. Although I guess that's something that Brian can speak to more intelligently than I can. But it feels like the run game is there. What isn't there, at least from my eye, is consistency in pass pro, or Bryce's tendency to flee the pocket when there is a there is a place for him to move and throw. I mean, let's face it. I mean, as high an upside, as high a ceiling as Bryce has, he made a couple of pretty bad mistakes in the first half of this game. I mean, he's got a McCulley, I believe, wide open in the end zone. No one's within 20 yards of him, and he throws an interception, throwing across his body back into traffic. That was not a great play. And then he makes a great play, but fumbles the ball on the curious rule where the ball went just inside of the pylon and out of the end zone. Clearly the right call, but I've never quite understood that rule. But nonetheless, those were, two pretty bad plays. Take those out, and we may be all singing different tunes that, the run game is going and things are looking okay. I mean, Bryce made some other mistakes. He threw some liners over guys' heads, and of course, our receivers continue to drop occasional balls too. So,
yeah, I look at this game. I look at like the strategy that Chip Lindsey had for him, and I don't see anything that I could criticize that much. I don't think I can tell him to do anything different. He gave him some easy throws. He gave him some easy reads. He gave him some, he did the things that you do for freshmen. Now, Purdue, like any defense, is going to get wise and take away some of those things, right? So, they have a screen blown up because that's something you're looking for, right? And then they try to hit behind the screen, and he just throws it at Marlon Klein's back foot instead of throwing it to Marlon Klein.
Well, Marlon Klein should have caught that ball still.
Yeah.
He should have tried to catch it.
If the ball hits like a foot behind your literal foot, and you don't make any attempt to catch the ball, that's kind of on you, not the quarterback. I mean, obviously there are better throws available there, but that was a catchable ball. Yeah.
So and the receivers haven't done very much to bail him out this year, right? There's another opportunity for Samaj to catch one that whizzes through his hands. It's just the receivers are what they are, right? And the tight ends, they've come along. We've seen some things from Tony Ellie. We've seen some things from Marshall. They're developing those guys. It's just, I'm saying, I don't look at this offense and say, oh, you're using him wrong, or you're not giving him the reads, or you're not giving him an opportunity to grow. They're doing the right things. He's just making freshman mistakes, right? He's just trying to, he gets out of the pocket, and he's, thinks he's going to hit his guy because he can whiz the ball faster than any high schooler can cover it. And guess what? College guys, even Purdue college guys, can get to that ball and intercept it. If he's not thinking, oh, I got a guy in the back of the end zone. I mean, sure, if he looks up and sees McCall, if he has a better sense of where everybody is, but he's a true freshman. And I keep going back to this. Go and watch some JJ as a true freshman, right? Up until Georgia. Right, yeah. He had some good plays, but also he kind of looked like a chicken with his head cut off. Go look at Devin Gardner as a true freshman, right, where he just run backwards out of the pocket, and then he's got 3 Northwestern guys trying to tackle him, and then he just chucks it up in the air, and magically with 3 people downfield, the Ray Roundtree is the one it falls to. There's just some wacky stuff that freshman quarterbacks do, and we went in prepared for this.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Someone said in one of the breakdowns this week, because I thought Denard was tremendous. I think and Board just really lent color to a lot of what was said. And someone said in one of those breakdowns, well, how come he's not developing as fast as some of these other teams develop their quarterbacks? And I said, well, what other team are you comparing them to? You can't be talking about Sand. He's not a true freshman. You can't be talking about Dante Moore. He's not a true freshman. What other true?
How did Dante Moore look as like true freshman?
Right.
A lot worse than Bryce Underwood. A lot worse.
Yeah. Who are we talking about? And while his standard is obviously going to be higher because he's a 5-star guy who invited, I'm not your typical freshman, and he's not. But still, he is still human, and there are going to be some experiences that are like every other freshman you see. And he happens to be going through those now. And he does not have the advantages that maybe a Trevor Lawrence, another true freshman, had. He didn't step into a playoff team. He didn't starting with his 5th game of his freshman season. He didn't have T. Higgins and Hunter Renfrow and Travis Etienne and all of those guys. He didn't have that kind of deal around him to the points that you guys were making. And so there's going to be sort of a stunted process. And yet, with all of those limiting factors for a true freshman, there are those times where it's not about the limiting factors around him. Sometimes the limiting factor is what you said, Brian, and it's just youth. It's just that he's just a young guy who's just going to have like just a freeze up moment. I got a guy wide open screaming down the seam on a vertical route, and I'm just going to flat miss him. It's not my footwork. It's not any other reason. I just flat miss him. And then on the next play, I get flushed from the pocket. I'm on the corner, and this is what I do. I throw on the run. Some people think I throw better on the run, and I sail it over his head. I mean, this just happens it doesn't make it right, doesn't make it excusable. But if you're looking for a reason or a why, sometimes that is the why. If you're looking for a ray of light beyond, just don't tell me he's a freshman, then take what Denard said. He said, well, if I talk about the Michigan State game, his eyes weren't in the right place. He's not seeing bubbles. He's got a touchdown on the left side of the field. He looks right. In this game, whether you're talking about the switch verticals, the play where he's flushed to his right and he has Zach Marshall going down the post wheel that he doesn't hit, the play action flood where he has McCulley in the end zone and he throws it short. Any of these balls, his eyes were in the right place on all of those pass routes. So I see from one week to the next, okay, I got his eyes in the right place, but he missed those throws. So I made some progress with his eyes. Now let's get his accuracy on point. Let's work on his feet because his footwork is still all over the place. Let's work on that in the bye week. So if you're looking for something, I gave you something. To the folks in the chat.
All right.
Well, I'll make a prediction. I'll predict in 2 years he's the first player picked in the draft. And I think that he's going to be a good NFL player. But right now he's just rough at like almost 99.999% of all freshman quarterbacks and most freshman players, actually. So.
Yep. All right, let's get to a break because we got to talk some Michigan basketball.
Yes.
You talk about a team that came out the gate looking like its press clippings. It's the Michigan basketball team. So we will get into that.
The men's basketball team too.
As we do want to tell you do-it-yourselfers out there. Your one-stop shop for all your home improvement needs. Our friends over at Chelsea Lumber. They have 3 locations to serve you in Chelsea, Salina, and Bridgewater. You find them online at chelsealumber.com and out at the Saline store because those 3 locations to serve you, Chelsea, Salina, and Bridgewater. Well, one of the things that they do well, the kitchen and bathroom renovations. Their kitchen and bath design showroom in Chelsea is unbelievable. Floor to ceiling, 25,000 square feet of options galore, where their Saline showroom floor recently renovated. It is outstanding too. And when we went to get our kitchen renovated, we went out to this Saline store. All of our bathrooms have been renovated with Chelsea Lumber as well. And that was before their showroom was renovated and had all those options where you could see them right there. Well, now they have that available at the Saline store as well. So kitchens, bathrooms, their designers are excellent. Any of your do-it-yourself projects, all the home construction materials you might need, all available at Chelsea Lumber. 3 locations to serve you in Chelsea, Saline, and Bridgewater. Find them online at chelsealumber.com. More MGoBlog Roundtable on the other side here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
All right. Yeah, that's right. They had Justin Ross too. Yeah, they were loaded. That was a loaded team. The Trevor Lawrence comparisons were never fair.
Yes. The
Terrell Pryor was my preseason comp. That's what I thought. Like they were gonna run Dave a whole bunch, get him outside of the pocket, and every once in a while he'd do something amazing.
You saw, I'm sure, Brian, that Henry Muse is gone for the year.
Yes.
Yeah, that's bad news for Michigan hockey because I thought he's played extremely well.
I got a question for you guys. I've been asking the Denard and Borges about this. I'm curious you guys' opinion. Bryce's best play of the game was that naked where the edge was in his face right away. He ducks under and he makes the throw. None of these guys bite on. None of these teams bite on their naked action. It's all from pistol. Don't you think if they went under center, they would get more of a reaction on play action, certainly on their naked stuff? And they ran some play action from under center earlier in the season. They gotta have. I haven't. So this isn't even an inside intel sort of thing. This is me openly questioning and wondering if now the fact that they aren't running it is them just holding it back.
It's funny that you asked that to Denard, because one of the most infamous plays I can remember of his career is against Notre Dame, where they run him on a naked boot from under center, and there's two Notre Dame defenders directly in his face, and he ends up throwing a pick. So I kind of feel like with where Bryce is at right now, like rollouts are really a focus for opposing defenses, and that's going to be the case under center or from pistol, because right now he hasn't shown an ability to sit in the pocket and pick you apart.
Yeah.
So I think that they'll be sitting on that no matter what formation you're running.
So yeah,
You asked that of Al. What did Al think? I mean, my guess is he would probably agree with you on that.
He thinks it would jerk the defense more, but he thinks that Bryce is limited his limited experience under center. Is a limiting factor in them doing it. The difference with Denard was Denard played under center. I mean, Denard wanted to play under center because he played under center in high school. Bryce didn't.
But that was like not when he played under center. It was terrible. Like there were these, like they had like 150 yards against Iowa that one game, and they were finally like, all right, well, we got to go spread, hurry up, and then they started scoring some points, and I was just like, for a guy like him, it's just so much harder for him to deploy his legs when he's being used under center. And like whatever additional advantage you get from that in terms of a downhill run game, I just don't think it's worth it with a mobile quarterback. And that's why you see that football has largely moved away from under center formations. So I just kind of feel like a guy like Bryce, I want him in the gun, and I want him making those RPO reads, not turn his back to the defense. Because that's the one thing about those waggles, and Michigan does this from pistol too, is you're turning your back to the defense. And personally,
coming back in 20 seconds, guys,
I would just rather have, the even the option of looking at the defense and making a decision post snap.
Yeah.
That's
interesting point. Interesting point. I wonder if they're because they ran some from under center.
Stand by, guys. Here we go.
And we'll get
Call that Primes Against Man Panda, by the way, was the name of the game column from that.
Back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
We are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the big1050.com. In the break, we were talking about under center versus play action from or naked from pistol, because Bryce's best play of the game was he nakeds from pistol. A guy's in his face as soon as he comes off the fake, and he ducks under and he makes a throw, and it's like a fantastic play. But no one's biting on that naked action anymore. And it's like, man, I just wonder if they would jerk the defense more if they ran it under center like they did a couple times early in the season. And the fact that they haven't even tried that, I wonder if that is just them saying, hey, we just don't think that this is an effective strategy for Bryce, or is that them saying, hey, we're holding a package back for a specific reason? I actually don't know the answer for that, which is why I posed it to Pose the question to you guys in the break.
This raises a very interesting historical thing. Few people may know that from 1906 or before, the first year the forward pass was allowed, until 1939, there was no under center. Everything was everything was a shotgun snap. And in 1939, Clark Shaughnessy and George Halas at the Chicago Bears changed the world by putting the quarterback under the center, Sid Luckman. And it so confused the then Washington Redskins that the Bears beat the Redskins 70-0, even though the Redskins were favored in the 1939 championship game. And many of these issues that you've just raised were talked about at the time. And of course, from 1939 forward, almost no one was in the shotgun except for the Mad Magicians in the late 40s, with Michigan winning national championships then. Until 1960, when there was an experiment by the 49ers to go back into a shotgun. It didn't work very well, but
there was also a massive rule change in there, Craig, where you were actually allowed to pass from the pocket. So you weren't allowed to pass from the pocket until the late 1940s. So I think the answer to that is, you just mentioned earlier, Sam, that they're trying to work on his footwork, right? Well, if you go under center, that's a whole nother suite of footwork, right? Every time you do one of these things, that changes the footwork. And under center pass, I like it for our run game, but it's it's what can you get away with Bryce? They're limited by the freshmanity, and I think we kind of covered this. I want to talk basketball.
All right, women, the 100 to 40.
Yeah. So they set a record. They come out the gates firing against Oakland, and even Greg Campbell's like, "Ooh, that's a really good team over there." It was like, "Hey, we know Greg." So, what did you guys think of these Wolverines in the first glimpse of them in the regular season? Brian Cook.
Well, Oakland was bad. Like those repeated passes to the corner for open threes where Michigan wasn't even doing anything to get those. Like, this is a team that returned one contributor, runs a complicated zone, was missing two players. I want to get that out of the way. This was not a good team. That said, you can see the size, you can see the playmaking. Trey McKinney is a knockdown shooter, and that is something that Michigan needs, whether it's a starter or off the bench. Like, he's just another guy that you can put out there and you'd be like, you can't leave this guy open. He had a step back. Most of his threes were back ribbon down or swishes. And then he has a little Darius Morris in his game. Now, he's not a point guard yet, but he has a crazy long wingspan. He's already 6'4". I think he's got a 6'9" wingspan. And he was able to use that on a couple of assists where it's just like, okay, this guy is the opposite of Mike Smith. And everybody loves Mike Smith. I love Mike Smith. But Mike Smith was like 5'11", but 5'9", 5'11", and had some struggles with turnovers in the Big Ten, just because the guys are bigger, they have longer arms, and McKinney is going to be able to find angles that other people can't find. And what that game showed for him is that he's comfortable doing that. Not everybody with a crazy long wingspan is able to use it productively, and I think that's a really good sign for his future. Now, Cadeau is what you wanted in this game. Now, he had a number of turnovers against St. John's, a much larger and better defense. So I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen against Wake Forest, which is going to be a much better team, a much more veteran team. And if he can keep those turnovers under control, and he doesn't have a 10 turnover rate, but 15 will do. This team's going to be very, very good, because defensively they have a very high floor, because have got Mara out there. Last year, Michigan was plus 32 points per 100 possessions with both Golden and Wolf on the floor. They were plus 17 with just one or neither on the floor. And it felt like they went out and they're like, okay, we're going to have Wolf and Golden out there 100% of the time. So they got 3 bigs instead of 2 this year. And they did play together, Morez Johnson and Ade Mara, for 25 of Michigan's 78 possessions, and I think maybe 10 of those were probably Malik Cordell time. So they're going to try it, And given the passing these guys have and the ability to rebound, and then Johnson being a relatively switchable 5, I'm going to be interested to see how that looks against a real opponent. Because if they can pull that off, then you get the best part of last year for 40 minutes a game.
Well, that's going to exist this year, sort of implicitly, Brian, because they're going to have 2 bigs out there most all the time. I think of their 3, because you've still got Yaxel, who is a good 6'9", 6'10" in that range. He's a historical center. He's not a center on this team, but they're always going to have 2 bigs on the floor, and so I think that's going to happen. I mean, Maize can move his feet. He's switchable, phenomenal athlete. And yeah, they'll have to perhaps do a little bit of drop coverage with Mara. But, Mara had 5 blocks in this game, but really when I went back and watched the tape, he had 8. For some reason, they shorted him. He almost had a triple-double in the game. And so he's not any sort of a liability. He is a little slow and clunky when he has to get out on the perimeter, but there aren't any 7'3" people in the world who aren't, or very few. And yeah, it looked good. What I was most impressed with was Cadeau. He really, I felt, played under control. The question's going to be whether that continues against a man team. Now, Oakland plays a zone. It's sort of a clunky zone, in my opinion, regardless of how good a coach Campy is, and he is a great coach. And we'll see. We'll see what happens when Michigan gets pressured. In this game, they got no pressure at all, really, from the Oakland defense. And in the end, I'll say this: I think Oakland may win the Horizon League. I think they have enough ability to win the Horizon. So I don't think they're a bad team.
That Garrett kid can play.
Yeah,
he was making some shots. Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I think they have some shooting, and they just got overwhelmed in this game. I mean, what did Maize have? 6 dunks in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game, because it was just too much. The size and athleticism of Michigan's front was too much for them to handle. And that was without Yaxel, who has like a hand injury. I mean, so Yaxel's playing with, I don't know, a broken finger or whatever on his shooting hand. He comes in and he makes all his shots anyway. I don't think he missed a shot. This is an estimable team, it seems to me. And I'll be surprised if they don't look that way in another month, but I guess we'll see. I don't know if either of you guys saw the women on the other night, and the women won by 60 after winning their last exhibition game by 58. And I went out and watched them on Tuesday night. They're really fun. I encourage basketball fans to go out and watch the Michigan women's team. They're
going to be a 5-out team this year, by the way. There's no centers.
There's no center.
It's not Ternav's team anymore at all.
Right. Well, they have a transfer from Bucknell. I can't pronounce her last name yet. Stoffel. Is that it? Yeah, she's good. And she's probably 6'2", 6'3". She's a thin 6'2", 6'3". But she's a more natural, say, post player than what they had last year. And so, this game was ridiculous. Now, who were they playing? I've forgotten even now. They had 45 turnovers. There was more turnovers than points in that game. And I think that's crazy, but this Michigan team's going to create a ton of turnovers. They have 12 people who can play, and they're just going to run them in and press. I think this is the most interesting team Michigan's ever had. And I've seen every single one of the women's teams, and I think this one is the most exciting.
Yeah, I thought you guys nailed it with Elliot Cadeau. He was fantastic. They were fantastic passing as a team.
Yes.
That stuck out huge in that game. This is everything they were built to be. My one concern is, like you said, pressure teams is when Elliott isn't on the floor. I think he'll be fine. I actually think he'll be fine. When it's not Elliott, will they be fine? I'm not like, it's not like a dire concern for me. I just wonder, like, if LJK-san, I'll repeat what I've been saying. If LJK-san, if his game rises this year, if he's like a, sixth man of the year candidate type guy, they're winning a championship. There's no question. There's no question. I'm not saying he will win the award.
What if he's starting too?
If he's that caliber player.
If he's that caliber player, he's starting over Roddy Gale probably. But
I would make him a starter too, but I've had this debate with Tim McCormick, and he was like, Rodney's a senior. And all that. I understand, which I'll get back. So fine. If he's the caliber of player to be like a six-man a year type of guy, they're winning a championship. I will agree with Joe Lunardi, because cancel Christmas, everybody else. Because that's what they need. They need someone who can, competently relieve Roddy against teams that can really get up in them. I think that could be the one thing that could give them some issues, because they could beat everything else, man.
Well, I mean, to me, like, Dusty thinks outside the box. So I think your pressure release valve against full court press type teams could be Mara. Like, he's 7'3". You just toss him the ball. He's a great passer, and then you broke the press. Like,
you
don't need to put the ball on the floor.
You're 100% right, Brian. It might not be something that they stumble with, because Dusty said we got answers. So even if they don't have LJK-san emerging as an answer, they still might get it done.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the big deal for me, at this point is, I mean, they're not going to have a problem if Cadeau's on the bench or off the floor against zone teams, but they ain't going to play many zone teams. I mean, and in this game, the ball just didn't stick. I mean, as you pointed out, Sam, the ball moved and it moved and it moved again, and until they got a good shot.
When you play a zone team, normally they're tall, and Michigan had like a foot of advantage on all these guys. So I just think that
we gotta go. We gotta go.
They got a second lineup. I like that.
We will see you tomorrow, folks, on the radio, and next week on the roundtable. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com.
Shouldn't spend so much time on Virchow.